Hello, Steph. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
We're going to do a rehash of what we just done. It's fine though.
That's
I'm all
absolutely
right. I'm consider this the last acceptable day to say Happy New Year because it gets
Yes.
a bit weird beyond this. It's like that teetering on the edge. Can I still say that?
I think first week of Jan, you can say Happy New Year. And I also think if it's the first time you've spoken to somebody, actually, no, I might take that back. Because if the first time you ever speak to somebody and it's like March, I don't know if that's acceptable, is it? Like, oh, Happy New Year. It's not.
Questionable and unique intro though.
Yeah,
Makes
that
it
is.
interesting, keeps people on their toes.
It does, yeah.
Thank you for joining me. You are one of I've already fluffed you up with the compliments, but you are one of my favorite people to talk about body image. But specifically, we kind of wanted to chat more about self-objectification and a little bit like what's all that about? How does that feed into body image and why it's important? And why do people that experience negative body image, well, how does it affect them in real day life? But if we could, 'cause I know you have some personal account of this, and I always think like when it comes to body image specifically, I know we've shared some experiences that we've been through. It takes some depth of understanding. You have to have gone through some of that yourself. It's not just the work you do with people. So I want this podcast to be also about what people know, but more about them and how they relate to people personally. And I know you've been on a bit of your own journey. So can we go a little bit way back and can you share some of that if possible? Where
Yeah,
your interest came from it?
I'm not that interesting, but I'll try to make myself sound it.
If
So
you
here we
could,
go.
please. Thank
Okay,
you.
3, 2, 1, let's go. Um, well, I think I'll be honest, I think I got into the fitness space because of sort of being commented on with my aesthetics, let's say. So I I trained as a personal trainer, I think in 2016. But prior to that, I think what got me into fitness and, doing all the cardio stuff that we were taught back in the 2010s was my dance training. So I'm a performer, which again, I still to this day feel a bit weird saying that out loud. And I used to keep both of my worlds very separate as well. Like it's only recently, probably in the last maybe year or potentially 18 months where I've started to talk about performing on my social media. So yeah, I think the aesthetic that I attach to dance and I guess just like this regular commentary that comes with being a performer, it is part of your job. And you are sort of trained to see yourself from a different perspective, which is what self-objectification actually is. So I guess that's my lived in experience and sort of working on tour, working on stage. And people just felt the need to just comment on me, which then influenced the way I thought about my body. I would say that I went through a bit of disordered habits and eating, and I do work with clients that struggle with that themselves in body image. And I do think, obviously, you don't want to work with a coach that's like exactly the same as you, but I do think there's that lived in experience that my clients work with me because they know that I get it, I think.
Mm.
So yeah, that's kind of what brought me into fitness and then brought me into sort of working with clients holistically, I'd say, into nutrition and sort of behavior change. But yeah, it's a funny old world, performing. It's so many
Yeah.
highs, but also there's so many like negative things that come with it. And you often look back and go, God, I put myself through that. Like, why do we do that? So weird.
Mm. Well, it's part of that, I guess, that web of influence and what you're surrounded by and what your norms are at that time. And that's the kind of the point I was curious to is like, when did you gain or at least gather a like, little inkling? Hang on a minute, but this, I've been told this is okay, everyone to talk about my body, give them permission to do that, almost to actually like this is quite negatively impacting me and like on a broader, I guess, cultural scale, this something not right about this.
I think when I was in my training at drama school, I always did feel a bit uncomfortable. But then what happens is when you get compliments, you kind of are striving for that external feedback a lot. So it becomes normal. So you are wanting that external like validation of like, oh yeah, you look great or you look trim or whatever words that people like to use. And then I think after that, when I worked professionally on stage, and then I would have random people come do like a meet and greet and then comment on my body. And some of them, you could say were compliments. Some of them you could say, oh, I'm quite a muscly girl. So I've always had like quite an athletic figure. And I think that's when I thought like in my young, well, I don't know how old it was at that point, probably early 20s. I thought, actually, I'm actually really uncomfortable right now, and no one else is like picking up on that. That's not right. And then I think gradually, as my career in fitness has progressed, and sort of working with clients that, you know, like I say, do struggle with their body image, and then doing my own education and reflection and sort of working self-objectification, I think that has really empowered me, because it does, I think understanding a topic makes you a lot more kinder to yourself, because you go, oh, I can identify with that. And actually, I don't need to feel shame for, you know, potentially not eating breakfast or restricting my diet because I was a bit of a product of what was going on at the time. But I think now I'm just a bit like, you know what, why am I putting a filter on this? Or why am I, you know, I think as well with the performing world, there's a lot of people in a position of power, so you feel a bit like silenced, and I don't think that's spoken about enough either. I'm pretty sure it's in most industries with different people, but I think now I'm like, well, you know what, I don't need to just dilute how I feel or dilute my words on Instagram. So I started posting about it, and then I've had a lot of people reach out with those posts, and now I'm like, yeah, this is something that, why is no one talking about this? Like, it is everywhere in that world, and obviously it is in the fitness industry as well. And what people as well don't realize is a lot of whether it's Pilates instructors, yoga, PTs, they have probably got a performing background, because a lot of dancers go into the fitness industry because they're told like they look right for it, whatever that means. So you could be coaching a PT, but you're actually coaching an ex-dancer, an ex-gymnast, an ex whatever. So yeah, again, that welcome to the ramble of Steph.
No, I think that's all relevant. I think that's great, because I think there is so much social reinforcement that comes with ticking a few boxes in terms of body ideals, with very little understanding what actually people go through, or what they've been through, and what they've been subjected to over the years. And this turn of phrasing about where we just drop our opinion on people's bodies to their faces, and that's just, I can relate on some level on a cultural thing. I don't think it's specifically cultural. My family from the Mediterranean, it's pretty much a given that someone is going to just comment on the shape of your body. And someone that grew up in a much larger body, I found, ironically, being judged on my appearance led to me judging my appearance and pursuing aesthetic-based sport. And the contradictory thing about that on reflection now is, hang on a minute, so I was subjected to strangers commenting on my body. I began to judge my own body, and I felt the best way to improve how I felt about my body was to enter a sport in which I just let strangers judge me on my body again. Well, that's going to do the trick.
Yeah.
And I think so many people go through that, and almost we have this culture within the fitness industry. We're almost enablers, we're players into this. And it's from, whether it's physique sport, whether it's encouraging certain pursuits, whether it's how we present ourselves online as well, and kind of what's applauded, and all the social reinforcement that comes with, wow, you look great. It's difficult to separate the noise, I find.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the objectification of like women, I want to get onto self-objectification theory, which typically revolves around women and how they're brought up to believe and think about their bodies as purely objects, more men from a functional standpoint. I think a little bit of that is kind of teetering into the male narrative now as well.
Yeah.
What are your kind of thoughts on that?
As in, like, men being objectified?
Well, I mean, just largely it being around women, but almost to combat the objectification of women, we kind of do the same with men, instead of addressing the kind of core issue, which is just, hey, we might be a little bit more than just how we look.
Well, I think, for anyone that doesn't know, objectification theory is like, it is research, and it's like a feminist research. And what it sort of says is, systematically, women have been reduced to being seen as objects throughout time. But I'm not definitely not sat here saying it's just a woman's thing, or just my problem sort of thing.
Oh, equally, I'm not saying, like, this isn't a whataboutism about men. I just think it's important to address the two.
Yeah, I think for sure, like, I do think men get objectified as well. I think I don't know, you could disagree with me here, but I do feel like there's a different tone with the objectification. Like, I think with men, it's like when you see a picture of a man, be that with a six-pack or whatever, it's like the messaging is like, this is what I can do for you, like, look how I can perform. Whereas for women, I think it's like, this is yours for the taking. I don't know if that, like, you can sort of see the difference. Or but then that's my lived experience. I'm not you or a man. But I do think it's everyone's problem. I don't know how we go about it. Well, unless you're working with someone that can help you and address your own body image. But I don't know the greater like change where that would actually start.
Yeah, I definitely see there's a different. I totally agree with you, firstly, but I definitely see there's more of I guess even in the objectification of men, it's more of like a positive spin. Like I sent you that graphic that was released of Ronaldo. It just is a poorly pitched thing, I think, with Boohoo at the time. And again, this isn't a whataboutism, so it's just as exactly what women experience. But I think it was going through some turmoil with Manchester United, and it was good news, ladies. Like that's all that's on women's minds, obviously. This bloke that plays football, but with women, it's more crass. Like it's more negative, I think. And I think when we're talking about inclusivity and representation in the fitness space, men especially are definitely more vocal negatively about what they feel is and isn't attractive to them. Again, like that's the sole reason behind that messaging. Like, oh, that's not fitness, that shouldn't be shown, this promotes that. Instead of actually what is at the core of everything that we're promoting, which is health behaviors. So it's almost like people have an issue with people looking a certain way. They talk about in air quotations, which no one listening will see, but self-responsibility, taking care of yourself. But equally, the moment that someone shows that they're taking care of themselves, or they are on a yoga video in a slightly larger body doing a certain pose, it's, I don't want that promoting whatever. So it's more negative, I think, definitely, and more hostile towards women than it is for men. Men are almost, okay, they're objectified, but it's more from I guess what men would want as welcome praise, even if it is for the sake of objectification, whereas women get it a lot worse, I think.
Yeah, well, when I was doing like a bit of reading into it, culturally, like men are defined as independent and like strong, whereas again, culturally and historically, women are defined as like decorative and passive. And I think that, I mean, I do believe that we could make a difference in terms of like the younger generation, but they also have access to social media at a younger age than like what I was, for example. But they're absorbing this messaging, like how, like you said earlier, kind of we're playing into this system because, you know, whether that's like with a selfie or with whether that's just promoting our coaching, but we might put a body picture with that, you're kind of influencing without realizing. And then, like I say, younger people that are at the age where they are really influenceable, is that a word? Not sure. You know, they're picking up on this, and like new data is suggesting that girls are more interested in how does my body look, whereas boys are more interested in how does my body perform, like the more functional components, which I find that's really interesting. And you know, I was a tomboy when I was younger. I was a sporty girl. And I remember, you know, I used to remember being about 8 years old and like boys would be like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, I can. Watch me. I'm really fast, actually. And I don't know. I just think that's probably stayed with me a lot. And now I can sort of see it in, well, it's kind of everywhere, isn't it? That, again, it's not, like you said, it's not a whataboutism. It's not me slating men either. But as a woman, I have experienced objectification in a, not from just a dance perspective or a performing perspective. It's been like, you know, I've had men come and slap me on the arse in a nightclub just because they think that they can. It's like, what? If I did that to you, like I don't even know what would happen. It's just really bizarre that these behaviours are very different.
Yeah, I think there's a whole different conversation about consent and what men think they have the ability to do, whether they have permission or not. And I do think that's all really important stuff to address. And again, like when we're talking about, I just referenced the objectification of men, is not by any stretch of the imagination comparable to what women go through. I just think it's interesting. The narrative is like, to combat this issue, let's just include them. Let's equality and all that. Let's just include them instead of just addressing the issue, which is maybe we don't just go around slapping women on the arse. Maybe we don't publicly just comment on them and their appearance all the time.
Yeah.
And with women especially, it's and I'm going to say this is historically not my opinion by any stretch of the imagination either, but women's worth and value have kind of been reduced to fertility, appearance. They're used as almost sex objects.
Yeah.
And it's, I wonder with like the messaging on social media, especially in how things are presented, and it's like everyone dresses how they want. Like I'm not passing a comment or opinion on that, but it's, are they almost taking part in their own oppression and objectification? Can they be confident in themselves if their value and their worth is just reduced on their contribution in how they look? I think that's on both parties. I'm not like that makes it sound like I'm blaming women as part of that, but I think the social cultural constructs around it is we're all bred to believe there is no different.
Well, I was as you were saying that, like I was with a friend over the weekend, totally throwing her under the bus here, but she was actually, I'm glad I didn't say anything at the time because it wasn't the right place anyway, but she said something about someone that I know, and she said, oh, they look really well, like they look like their best version of themselves right now. And I actually know that this person isn't their best version of themselves right now mentally. And it just, again, it's like, it's that confirmation of like, well, that's how you look happy, you look whatever in that picture, and now I've got this picture of you that I think you're your best version. And it's just, I don't know where that comes from. I think there's lots of influences. I think peers, parents, and media obviously all contribute, but I do think we all play our role in it. I'm not sat here going, you know, like you are, that we are placing blame and we don't have our own part to play in changing it. And that's why I think we just drop the body comments. I think, because I'm in two minds about that actually, because I think you're allowed to, you know, if you get a compliment, I had a client actually that was gone the other way, and she was like, I'm not accepting compliments, like no one's allowed to comment on my body. And I was like, well, no, you can enjoy a compliment, you can enjoy feeling nice, it doesn't matter, but just don't base your worth on that compliment, and don't like go out looking for that, because that's not going to lead to like great happiness, which people think it is. And I think that's another message underneath like transformation photos. It's like you're going to feel and look amazing when you get to this point,
and cure your mental health as well, apparently.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, and I think these like little comments that you have with, be that with your peers, with your family, it all contributes to your own body image. So yeah,
that web of influence, if you like. I think even, you know, we can blame or at least point our fingers at society broadly, but it does start from parents and how they talk about them. And I can definitely reflect on my mum, bless her, and it wasn't something that she definitely intentionally did, but as someone that was subjected to diet culture, slim fast era, you know, the awful powder stuff that they used to mix up, it was quite often, can't have that, I'm being good, or, you know, oh, like this bit, and groping bits of her body, oh, this feels a bit fat, and kind of, when you're subjected to that from when you're teeny tiny, like, kids are sponges, they pick up on a lot. And that's why I'm always cautious from a coaching perspective, is when you're kind of making suggestions, you're having these open conversations with the people that you work with, it's okay, we might resort to MyFitnessPal and weighing your food for tracking, but is that necessarily something that's going to be helpful for your kids to see? Is it helpful for them to see you jump on the scales every day? Is it helpful for them to, and because they do pick up on how we converse and interact with other people, is when you're commenting on someone across the room in a larger body and you're putting labels on it and all these kind of things, is we learn that stuff from somewhere. It isn't just society, you know, it isn't just the media, it starts at home.
Yeah. And also at that age, you're getting probably evaluated more so because your body is changing. So you've got your parents potentially commenting. Again, it's not potentially in a bad way, but it's still a comment that is with them. And I don't think people realise the power in their own words. And I think as well with, you know, I'm not a parent, I'm no expert, but I also remember being a teenager and being a child, and also have those memories myself. And I think, if this is where I just think it just stems back to being a bit educated as an adult, but also I do believe there just needs to be more education in schools. Didn't want to say it, I don't know if I'll get told off, but I do think that.
Well, you don't think maths up until you're 18 is important?
No, I think maths needs to go.
Well, you haven't used Pythagoras theorem in recent years, or?
Funnily enough, I haven't been using it that much recently, but you know, new year, new me, I might start. Yeah, I think there's just more life skills that you can learn at school, and if that's an age where we now know from research that is influencing the way that, for example, girls objectify themselves, then why are we not trying to do something about it? Yeah, so that's my little rant for the day.
Yeah, I think with the social media in general, it has this incredible capacity to an unfathomable amount of good in the world. but also you can't ignore the problematic aspects of it. And I think it's going to be one of those things almost like cigarettes. We reflect on years to come, because I mean, inhaling smoke, no one really thought, oh, this is going to be amazing for my health. But it didn't stop them from putting it on billboards and advertising it, and a lot of people making a lot of money. Is I think we've got that inkling now, and in years to come, we're going to see the gravity of that. But I think you're exactly right when it comes to comments. I've said this many times before, so forgive me, repeating it to you. So I'm sure I've definitely said it to you, but even when it comes to Mila, my daughter, bless her, again, it sounds like I'm being harsh with my mum. I love my mum to bits, but she'll often say, "You're beautiful, what a beautiful girl," but all of these things. And of course, I agree. Of course, I agree. I'm totally biased as my daughter, but I also don't want her to base her sole value in the world on that, because there might come a time when she's not praised on being beautiful, and then she has to question that. And I'd much rather admirable traits like she's kind, she's thoughtful, she tries her hardest, things like that are brought up more often. And of course, she might be told she's beautiful at times. And you kind of mentioned not giving anyone compliments sometimes, and that's like the perspective for some people. But I think there are subtle inklings people give you. If you know someone's on a health kick, if you know someone's trying to lose weight, then they might really appreciate saying, "Oh, you look amazing."
Yeah.
But they often give you an inkling if it's someone that you haven't seen in 10 years, like you mentioned, or someone you haven't seen in a while, and they're commenting on someone else, is they could have been going through grief, loss, like, all of these other things, stressful moments in their life. And we just tend to attribute smaller body to healthier body.
Yeah, exactly. And with the fitness industry, this is a problem. And we're not like sat here today going like, we're going to change this, because I don't think we can, but I think having these conversations are helpful for sure. But do you feel as a coach, like you have a responsibility and a duty to, I guess, in terms of like how you promote yourself and your business, like is there a way that you go, like how you post an Instagram post, for example, like do you have like a question like in your head, sort of tick boxes of like, oh, is this damaging? Is this, I don't know, trying to figure out words I'm trying to use right now, but do you know what I mean? Have you got like a bit of a system where you go, actually, this isn't right, this isn't something that I'm going to post because of this and this reason?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as someone I know is like well versed in their own personal values, which I think we do all take for granted, because it's probably something that's been spoken about a little bit more over the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years, is we take for granted that people have an awareness of their values. So I know when it comes to social media communication, I do feel a huge sense of responsibility, and I do try to be as conscientious as possible. And I do think it goes without saying, you can't cater for everyone. Like, your content just isn't for everyone, same as anyone else's content isn't for you. I can't expect everyone to like me because I don't like everyone, all of those kind of things. But I do try to think, am I putting personal gain ahead of actually the message behind this? And I was in two minds to share it. I didn't share it in the end, but I haven't posted any kind of before and after type pictures since about 2020, early 2020. And I made a concerted effort not to do that, because I found whatever context I applied to that, like what other things I achieved in life, job promotion, enhanced relationship with food, it'd always be reduced to the body. Like, no matter how I tried to, whether it was a black and white miserable picture before, an amazing Photoshop one afterwards, it didn't matter. It didn't matter whether that was just someone with approved body image without the before and after or anything like that. It was always this person, lower body fat, happy, mental health fixed. So I chose not to do that anymore. And just by comparison, I've been sharing testimonials and stuff. And I shared one the other day. I thought it was quite a nice thing to get. And I try not to put words in people's mouths when I ask for them. But in terms of engagement on a visual platform, in terms of, I tend not to go too much on likes and things, but saves. Like, I take saves as there's something that people
That's a power like, I think. Save is a power like.
or possibly my captions are just too long. No one's got the bloody time to read them. That's the other possibility. But I like to think, I kid myself that there's something in there that someone has found helpful that they either want to recap or they want to revisit later or possibly share with someone else. And by comparison, I think this, if you don't buy me, I don't want to play with my phone. I only did it the other day. I decided not to share it in the end. But like metrics wise, and I won't go on likes because I don't think that's valid. But this before and after one, someone had say, what people had saved 23 times, for example. I don't have a huge, and there's like 25 comments on it. And then by comparison, a 7-page written testimonial about someone's experience without any visuals attached was 3 saves, 19 likes. No comments at all. And I know that's not the only metric we can go on, but I think I accept now cutting my nose off to spite my face is not always going to massively help business-wise by not using that in terms of marketing. But I do sleep better knowing that I'm not fueling or adding to the problem. That was a very long answer for a very short, succinct question, wasn't it? Sorry.
No, I really enjoyed that. I liked it. I was nodding along there. I was really.
How about you?
No, I mean, I feel like you know this anyway. We're very much on the same page with this. I don't post transformation photos, but I used to in the past. I think the last transformation photo, if you go back on my Instagram, if you really knows it, I think it was like 2019 or 2020. So really, it's not that long ago. Maybe it is. It's 2023 now, isn't it? Oh yeah, I'm still in 2022 mode.
I think everyone just hit pause at end of 2019.
Yeah, so I think I do, because let's face it, I'm using my Instagram to influence. I'm not an influencer, but I do hope I influence, and I do have this like thing in my mind. I'm like, someone's watching me, whether they interact with me or not. So if that person stumbles across my messaging, I hope, even if they agree or not, I hope that they understand, I guess, my ethos as a person and as a business. So there's ways that I write my posts to get my message across, but then I'll also show like client results, which may include a photo of them, not a before and after, and then a bit of a process of how I helped them, just so that they can say, oh, if I did work with Steph, that's how she gets me from A to B. So I know what you mean about different posts do different jobs as a PT and an online coach, because it's a hard one to, you want to, I don't know, well, it just depends on sort of what your aim is for Instagram. But, you know, I am a business at the end of the day, and I've got my personal Instagram that I don't use that much to post things for like my family and things. And that's what I probably enjoy more. But I also do look at my Instagram as a part of my business. So there's a way that I will show up on Instagram. And that's something that I actually said to a PT before, like there's a lot of similarities between a personal trainer and a performer, because for one, you do attach the way that you look to like as part of your branding. You do feel the pressure to look a certain way, and I honestly think as coaches, whether they realize it or not, they are performing. I'm not saying it in a fake way. I'm not saying when you talk on your stories that you're being so fake right now, but there's a way that you're trying to deliver that message to your audience and to your niche. So I think there is a lot of similarities with these two professions. And funnily enough, like I'm an example of this. You go into performing and then you can end up in the fitness industry, and you're picking two image focused industries, two objectifying industries, and then wonder why you've got disordered eating. So that's why I work with a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say, I do think there's a huge performative element, and I do think I think that's genuine. I think that's authentic sometimes. I also think there is an online persona which people live up to, and I think that's
true. Yeah,
I can get over I was talking about this the other day, that I can get over the performative side if it puts a smile on someone's face.
Yeah.
We're all a bit silly. We've all got different layers to our personalities. We're not all serious and business all of the time, but I think the stuff that I struggle with, I guess, is the performative inflammatory stuff, being controversial for the sake of controversy. I'm going to say something I know is going to spark a reaction for all of the wrong reasons, but just because I want eyes to my page. I struggle to get my head around that. And I think that's when people, unfortunately, they do have this view of fitness professionals being a bit morally bankrupt, devoid of any empathy, and it doesn't do us as an industry a huge amount of favors. And yeah, again, like you was talking about, the going from being judged into more judgment, is I got into physique sport, and you know, although I worked with people that in physique sport and I worked with purely body composition goals for a long time, I don't know whether it's a conscience came from it, because I want this to be clear on anyone listening. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having body composition or fat loss goals. That is the broadest population of the people that I work with, and how people choose to market themselves is up to them. I've just found that it was making me increasingly uncomfortable, because I find fitness professionals are in this almost what becomes a self-imposed prison. Is they're constantly reminding others and themselves that they are more than just this outer shell, but with that kind of messaging. And I guess we work with a similar population in that when I have people that come to me, other fitness professionals with body image problems, and all of their marketing is before and after pictures of their clients. And it's having the subtle, you can't tell people what to do and what not to do, but you're having these subtle conversations about exposing yourself to image-based media. That's probably not helping. Like, you want to reduce that. And, you know, if you're working with people, this is probably what you'd suggest as well. Yet every single post is a before and after post. It's just based on, you know, the kind of the stats that I showed you. It is, again, are we just enablers? Are we just, you know, fighting against it? Because largely that is why people come to us, is
exactly.
And that's how a lot of us got in the industry in the first place.
That's another thing. It's like, well, due to some like complicated way of getting into this industry, I'm thankful that I got into it. I don't know if I got into it for the right reasons, being honest. But I do believe I am actually quite strong with certain opinions, and maybe I will change. I think that's a good thing, but I don't know if I'll change on this one. I think if you're a coach and you're promoting that you help improve body image, not relationship with food, even though both of them can come hand in hand. If you're someone that's helping a person's body image and you're doing before and after pictures, they're very conflicting. I don't understand it. And like I said, I've done it before. Probably when I did my group coaching and a bit more fat loss focus, but still, even like you just said, I still work with clients that have aesthetic goals. I'm not sat here saying that having an aesthetic goal is wrong at all. It's more about you having that information, education, and that choice, so then we can get you there in the most healthy way. But you can't, I just don't understand people promoting a before and after picture with body image. It doesn't actually make sense. I don't think people understand what body image is. That's what it tells me.
Yeah, I think there's just an ethical element to that. I think it's, when people come to us, it's all about informed choice, and of course everyone has the choice to do with their bodies at whatever they wish. But if you're coming to me with aspirations of doing a bodybuilding show, for example, is firstly I'm going to recommend you elsewhere because that's not a population I work with. But also, I feel like a responsibility to make you aware of the negative aspects of that, because the polarized, glamorized positives of looking a certain way, there's loads of that out there. So from an ethical position, and I feel quite strongly about that as well, is because what I do see occasionally is prep coaching whilst enhancing your body image and your relationship with food, which they're two contradictory things. And you can get some good coaches and some terrible coaches in there, and there will definitely be some that can help you a little bit, but they're contradictory goals. You are not increasing, you're not enhancing your body image by training for a bodybuilding show. You're not enhancing your relationship with food. Everything by behavior wise that you're doing and investing in is the counter opposite of that.
Exactly. But do you feel with, let's say, objectification in the fitness industry, that we would be out of a job if there wasn't that going on?
Possibly. Truthfully, yeah.
It's like
it is. I think it's evolved though, like a little bit. I even think about coaching, and I know how you work and how your team works is slightly different, but I don't really think that many people have an understanding of what coaching is. I think there's a different, there's very much comparison or draw is the difference between coaching, working in alignment with someone, working in alignment with their values, which is client-led through them, towards some sort of confidence and autonomy over time, to product. I am a coach. I coach hundreds of people one-to-one. Here are your macros. Here's your calorie count. Here's your training program. That's the same as everyone else's. I think that is, having been a personal trainer and a fitness instructor, that is close to that than that is working in alignment with someone and actually coaching to get the best out of them. Does that make sense? There's lots of words there.
No. I do think that people think that coaching is very instructional and black and white. So actually, I like kind of bringing people in, and then, not that I know everything, but like re-educating them and going, oh, like you said about like autonomy is the purpose of coaching. When you work with us, the point is that you then build these skills so you can do it on your own. This is why, well, diet culture has a lot to answer for that, because diet culture says, here's a meal plan, here it will solve all your problems, you just got to stick to it. but obviously people can't stick to that because life happens, and you shouldn't want to stick to that anyway. Well, I don't know, you might want to do that, but who knows. Yeah, I think people don't understand, like you say, what coaching actually is. So then how, I guess that would come down to like marketing as well, maybe how we put our message out. But yeah, what would you say to a new coach then? Would you actually tell, well, I know you wouldn't tell someone what to do, you made that clear, but what would you tell your younger self then as a young PT?
That's really tough because I think all of, without sounding too cliche, all the lessons I've learned, it's been necessary for me to fall on my face.
Yeah.
So when I started as a level 2 health and fitness coach, just wiping sweat off machines, doing kind of gym inductions, and I was working towards my level 3 at the time, and doing some voluntary PT stuff, and also doing voluntary strength and conditioning hours in our gym at the uni there. And you go from working with the super adherent, compliant, to the point if there was a typo on their program, they would just do it athletes, to like a single mum with 2 under 5 coming into the gym that might be her one gym session, and not really be able to get my head around, why can't you just do this? And I felt like that was a baptism of emotional intelligence, which sometimes you need experience of. I don't think you can teach emotional intelligence from a prescriptive point of view, much like coaching.
Yeah.
It has to be very descriptive, asking more questions than providing answers, and falling on your face with it. So I'm glad I had some really good advice early on. I had it from a few people, so I can't distinctly attribute it to one person, but it was great you're doing your qualifications, but just go get as much experience as possible, work with as many people as possible from as many different worlds as possible, because you get a good idea of who you can help, who you like working with, and who you don't. Because I found when I was working with athletes, I mean, it sounds good on paper, but actually there's no real challenge. You just not got to mess up an athlete, really. Whereas the real challenge in getting the best out of someone, there's something, again, quite cheesy and life-changing about someone finding the change in themselves and knowing you've played a part in that, but actually they're responsible for that.
Yeah.
Like I find something incredibly rewarding about that. It's I've been along here on your journey, but actually you're the one that's provided all the answers, which is,
they've done the work. Actually, you can
yeah,
help them, but ultimately they decided in their heads that that's what they were going to do. Sometimes it takes longer for other people, but it's them doing it, even though we, like you say, you play a part in that. But yeah, that's another thing that I find interesting on Instagram, is like the way PTs kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm throwing too much shade today, but it's like they just say like, oh yeah, this is because of me, basically, that they got to this point because I did that. And it's like, no, you didn't actually, they did that.
my favorite I saw quite recently, which I don't see a great deal in honesty, because I don't follow a huge amount of people, and that sounds like it's some sort of superiority thing. I might just state that that's from my own headspace more than anything. I get overwhelmed with exposure to too much. But they had shared a client testimonial about what they had achieved. It was an image of them on the
What?
carousel. Yeah, so this was like, it was a picture of them, if you could imagine, like an Instagram square picture of them on the left or the right, whichever it was. This is me telling you about my client, so and so, and it's gone on to tell you what they've achieved with a picture of them with their kit off at the end. I was like, well, I don't know what that's about. What is that?
What is that?
What is the angle there?
Well, I'm just trying to think about my post, because I definitely had a post where I've used the client's picture and then like my little face in the corner because it's just my branding. Is that what you mean? Are you attacking me right now, Dan?
So
Was
yeah,
it my
this whole
post?
setup is a passive aggressive attack on
Oh
you.
my God, is that why you invited me on? Fantastic. I get it now. No, joking. Well, yeah, so was it actually, so sorry, talk
So
me through.
it was
It
a
was,
full length picture of them with their
yeah,
client's name,
yeah,
like another carousel slide of the weight they'd lost in that time frame,
yeah.
and then a picture of them with their kit off on the inside. As
Oh,
in,
right, I see. Oh, yeah. That's funny.
get in touch.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask you the same question, because I feel it might be similar in terms of like in the industry. If you had to go back to a younger Steph at performing arts school,
Yeah.
about what she should have or felt she could have asserted herself more on or questioned at the time, because I know you've got a little bit of a younger audience because of the talks you do at schools as well. So I know you're hyper conscientious of that. What would you tell younger Steph?
Well, I think I am a born people pleaser, and I think the training environment at drama school, it reinforces people pleasing, because you're looking, like I said earlier, you're looking for that external feedback to progress your performance. So you're wanting to please, and also, you know, you've been told in the environment that you're replaceable. So why would you cause a rift if, you know, you've got someone else next to you that could do the job and that wants that job as well? But
Sorry
I
to
think,
interrupt you. I was just going to say, because that, like, that power dynamic
yes, big power
and that
dynamic.
fear
Mm.
instilled in you, that must have, you know, understandably led to that kind of feeling a bit oppressed and not being able to speak.
Yeah, I definitely, there's a huge thing, a power dynamic in that environment. And I do think that's played a part of how I respond now. I am a bit of a yes person. I'm up for a challenge. I'm up for helping people. So, oh, can you do this stuff? Like, yeah, I'll do that. And then I'll probably think about it rather than think about it and then say yes or no. And I'm only recently just doing that now, like saying no more often. So I think, going back to like younger me, I think I would just wish I had a bit more, not strength, but just, I wish I knew that I was allowed to set boundaries. I wish I could say, oh, I prefer you didn't, you know, talk about my body like that. And because really that just puts it back on them. It's not, you know, you criticizing them. It's just you saying, I just don't want you to do that. Like, you know, stop. And then it's for them to go, oh, actually, like, then they can review their words and review their behavior rather than it be about you, because, you know, you ultimately think that you're the problem. So if you speak up, then you're still the problem. So I think that's, but then, like you said earlier, some of those struggles have led me to where I am now, and I'm quite thankful for that. But would I wish that on other people? No. So yeah, I think when I work with like younger people, so for example, like a 20-year-old, we would do a lot of work on boundaries, because a lot of the time people think that boundaries are actually to do with other people, which they are, but they stem from you, and you've got to know your own limits. And I wish I understood my limits. Again, it's like that teaching at school, like I wish life skills and knowing, you know, that limit, whether that's socially or work-wise, that balance that we're trying to strive for, which is kind of, I don't know if that is realistic, but just knowing that you can set that boundary. I think I wish I learned that early on. Yeah, that, again, ramble from me, but
No, I think that's all really valid stuff. And I think, you know, we was talking about a younger age and boundaries, and I know we touched on consent earlier as well. It's like something I'm really mindful of from a parent's point of view is kind of you, and this is something I reflect on as an adult. As a kid, you want nothing but to fit in and be accepted by everyone. And you kind of, as you get older, you realize some of the lessons around love is taught around how conditional it is, when actually it should be unconditional, which means you should be able to develop your own personal boundary around things you're not comfortable with. So just an example of that is, I'm always conscious, Mila's a little bit like me, she's a little bit more introverted, and she can find certain environments overwhelming. It takes a while to suss them out. There's something, especially with family, we don't force upon her, is I won't force her to give relatives a cuddle if she doesn't want one. And I think something like that, seemingly insignificant, does teach kids something about boundaries and also consent. It's like, I don't want her to feel like she has to appease other people. She must give, you know, my nan a kiss on the cheek and a cuddle and stuff like that, if she doesn't want to.
yeah.
And also think from the flip reverse of that, like Jack's my youngest, he's only 18 months, but I don't want him under the belief that he can go around just grabbing women, obviously, or girls, and, you know, things like that. You spoke about your account of just having your bum slapped is, again, boys, men, they pick those things up somewhere.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I remember we spoke about that before, actually, about like kids being able to say, actually, I don't want to give them a hug, and just little subtle things like that, which probably isn't, like you say, it isn't a big deal, but it is contributing to a big deal. Knowing that you've got a bit more power. And I think that's probably why I enjoy being a coach, because of you instill that, hopefully, autonomy in somebody for them to make those choices that are aligned with how they want to live, rather than, you know, this is my method, you're fitting around me, and I'm going to get you to your goal via the way I want you to live. And I think that it does come down to like how you are when you're younger and all of those influences, which we can't control everything, but if you've got strong boundaries, then at least you can change some of that.
Yeah, and they do all feed into each other. You know, you and I both work with people with concerns around their body image, that you know, the self-objectification thing is a thing for them, a big part of it. Boundaries come into that, being assertive, not appeasing everyone, and not being a perfectionist about everything. All of those things, they all feed into the same beast, if you like. So some awareness around them from younger, however that's taught, doesn't necessarily need to be distinct body image lessons, but you know, being outspoken and being, I think, especially with the mental health narrative, being comfortable to share how you feel about certain instances and experiences should be something that's welcomed. You know, I would like to think that teachers want children that they're teaching to be able to approach them about anything, because unfortunately, home isn't a safe environment for all kids. You know, if your child is in a safe environment at home, you want your child to come to you, you know, or if you're an aunt, sister, whatever that may be, is just encouraging this open dialogue around what people are comfortable with and not.
Yeah. And you know, when you said about being like assertive, like I've had it throughout my teenage life and now, like men saying that I'm feisty. I'm like, what is it, because I'm just spoken up, or I've just actually got a different opinion to you?
Yeah.
I really, that is a bit of a pet hate. And it's like, actually, girls can assert themselves without feeling like they're being difficult.
Yeah.
Because you do find that, again, it probably is a generational thing, but also I've had it with people of my age telling me that I'm being feisty. Where have they learned that from?
Yeah.
You know? And I was brought up, and I've got a sister. My dad, you know, got us into sport early, probably brought us up as boys, maybe, I don't know. But he was very much like, if you want to do it, you can do it. So that was my attitude. So then now I've got this, like, not everyone obviously, but people saying like, oh God, yeah, wow, you're quite assertive, or that it takes them by surprise, because I'm normally quite a just relaxed kind of person, but obviously I've got an opinion as well, and it's like, oh gosh, she's got an opinion as well, how dare she? You know, she's nice, but now I don't know, she's a bit feisty for my life.
Oh yeah, because you got to fit in a box. You can't be
into that,
shades.
yeah. Now it's like, oh, she doesn't actually fit into that box that I put her in.
Yeah.
Which I could actually talk about that for another hour, which you don't need.
No, I think that's all part of it, because I think it's a lot of I'm a stickler for language. A lot of the language that you use is distinctly masculine or feminine, when actually for men and women there are aspects of femininity and masculinity in both, but the language we use around them is entirely different. So assertive stroke feisty. But I feel like the male and the female narratives feed into that. So I'm using a phrase that's out there. This is not a phrase that I would use, but for example, like boss bitch.
Yeah.
Used by women to refer to other women. Does that help?
I don't know. Do you know what? I definitely say that. Like, I don't say it like as in I use it, but I've definitely have said that. And or like, oh, I feel like a bit of a boss bitch today. I don't know where. I wouldn't say that. I don't take that as a bad thing, but maybe if you go very deep into it, maybe it is part of a. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something else that reminds me of boss bitch. But yeah, why do you think that's like a bad?
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think like just with these drops in phrases, these common terminologies we use, they become so ingrained they're then impossible to almost get rid of. So just like another example, like cheap, or even like referring to food by its moral value or supposed moral value, good and bad. That's used just as a slight of the tongue thing in media across the planet. We use it in our common day dialogue. But we kind of know that's not helpful as well.
Yeah.
You know, cheat meals. Well, I know what you mean. Like if someone's coming to me and talking about cheat meal, I know what they mean, but I'm not going to feed into that by repeating that.
No, exactly. Yeah.
I'm still not going to be an asshole and overcorrect. No, actually, we don't use that terminology here. It's just, you know, same with like good and bad food is, I'll let someone else say that to me, but I'm not going to be part of that. And I just wonder, when we're talking about the distinct differences in how men and women are referred to, when they're simply just knowing their mind, being assertive, being outspoken, and actually it's quite an admirable trait, I think, just on a human level, being able to effectively communicate yourself and your needs and wants, regardless of male or female. We want that for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But then we label it like feisty or boss bitch or badass or he knows his mind or she knows her mind and all these things.
That kind of goes back. Yeah, but that's what kind of goes back to objectification theory and the culture, and historically over time, men are brought up to thinking that they should be independent and all of that. And then girls are just kind of this passive thing that comes in and goes out. And it's just like this decorative little thing in the corner. So when you start to talk and speak up, especially in an environment where there is a power dynamic, or, you know, you're in a family where there's certain family values, like these are, it's not an easy discussion to have. It's not an easy job, but I think knowing that you can speak up is part of it, and the awareness of why you feel like you can't speak up in certain situations, because then that you can then be kinder to yourself, because then you can start to implement that change, because you can't change, you know, this, we talk about this as well, you can't change from a place of like hatred and shame. So yeah, I do, there's so many things to this though, isn't it? This is just a conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's like with you were talking about boundaries there, and I think it's theoretically on paper and rationally makes total sense, but also as someone that was a bit of a people pleaser, is actually to assert yourself, speak your mind, say no to you know, I mean, like to seemingly benign stuff. You get this inner turmoil you almost go through, like nauseating nerves. It's hard to implement that stuff. Like most of these things we know about behavior change, on paper sounds great, looks great. To actually do them is something totally different.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard. It's hard.
It is. Finally, Steph, because I've taken up enough of your time, just on the boundary side of things, because I think that does feed into the self-objectification narrative, and, you know, specifically body image as well, is if you had like 3 tips in terms of people instilling some sort of boundaries in their world, or where even to begin deciding what they feel uncomfortable with, because I think so many people live with stuff that they're uncomfortable with for so long, they just, I guess, as you perhaps did at a performing arts school, is just, oh, that's just what it is for everyone. Where would they begin?
I think I do think that your gut instinct is there for a reason. I don't know if that's, I'm not sure if that's evidence-based, but I do think if you're in an environment, whether it's, I don't know, professionally, personally, and you feel uncomfortable, then use that awareness, whether you write it out or identify how you felt in that moment, or what was the quote unquote trigger for you to feel a certain way, then build up that information of going, okay, I'm now understanding what makes me feel uncomfortable, or whatever feeling. So again, you've got to bring the awareness in. You can't just start implementing boundaries out of nowhere. So being a little bit more observant of yourself. And then, I don't know, you can then, I'm trying to think of a situation, but to implement a boundary, you could actually plan it out or write it out, doing it at a time where you feel like it's not as emotional, whether that's like, some people like, I can't do it at dinner with my family because it's just a bit too much, there's too many people there, or do you know what I mean? So finding a way that you want to deliver it. And then I guess the third thing is actually keep to it. Like a lot of the time we resent our own choices because we've stepped over our own boundaries, and that's when you feel that guilt or resent or whatever. So if you actually build a bit of a muscle, like when you go to the gym and you do your bicep curls, building your biceps, like it's similar, you've got to build this muscle of boundaries. And then what you do find is, yes, not everyone's going to like it, whatever, but then you won't be this people pleaser, which you may be if you're listening to this, or if you follow me, you might be a people pleaser. So I think doing it like that, awareness, then implementing it in your own way, and then sticking to it.
Thanks so much. I think that's incredibly valuable for people to take away, because I feel like they're the bare basics, as you said, that probably should be taught at school, but we are never taught. So going through our own journeys as adults, it's things that we have to come to understand. So just sharing some of that, I think, is incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. Where can people go to find more about you, if they don't already know? And why don't you know, people?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Steph_ETPHD coaching, and I coach with the ETPHD team, and we help clients with their relationship with food and body. So you can also find me through Amelia Thompson as well. I don't know where else I am. Really, I've got a TikTok account now, Dan, actually.
Have
got a little
you?
TikTok account. I don't know what I'm doing. I just thought, you know what, sometimes you've got to evolve and go with the times, Steph, and maybe that's a people pleaser thing as well. Who knows?
The performer in you coming out. But again, like
True.
seemingly harmless way of communicating the message, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do you know what, TikTok can be a lot of fun, but also some very strange things on TikTok.
Yeah, you can lose a lot of time on TikTok
Yeah.
for sure. I've when I upgraded my phone, actually, I just chose not to re-download TikTok
Good
just because
boundary. Good
I
boundary.
found myself in those half-hour loops of, and this was back when it was 15 seconds. I've just watched like half-hour, 15-second clips. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, it's addictive. They know what they're doing, don't they?
Oh
These apps,
yeah,
whatever.
everyone's fighting for your attention, and they know more ways to do it. And we see that with the content they put out. These hooks. Are you putting enough hooks on your content?
Go away. Leave me alone. I prefer Instagram being like carousels as well. I do like
Yeah,
the occasional video, but I want Instagram to go back to normal and not be so video driven. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you on a visual platform
I
that's
know.
there to entertain?
Awful. Yeah, damn it.
No, I'm with you. I rebel against it, and it's all about the written word for me.
Mhm.
If you haven't listened to this and you do enjoy it, I think it's mildly more interesting than white noise, at least. Please do rate, subscribe, do share with a friend and all that, because as much as I hate begging people for external validation, love me, want me, need me, the only way this does reach more ear holes is if people share it. So thank you for listening. Steph, thank you for your time. You're amazing, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.